Hey guys, tonight we wander into a strange, watery corner of the past where the earth itself refused to stay solid. And the people who lived there decided that walking on the ground was simply too much trouble. We are heading to the vast, forgotten marshes of southwestern France, long before they became the endless pine forests you might see on a map today. This is a story about isolation, ingenuity, and the profound boredom that comes from watching sheep in a landscape that looks exactly the same in every direction. You are going to step into the wooden shoes of a shepherd who spends his days hovering 5 feet above the mud, looking down on the world with the calm detachment of a giant. It is a place where the horizon stretches on forever, where the silence is heavy enough to weigh on your shoulders, and where the only way to keep your feet dry is to stop using them altogether. You probably believe this sounds like a circus act or a childhood game, but for centuries, this was just the daily commute for thousands of people who figured out that the best way to handle a swamp is to simply rise above it before you get too comfortable and possibly fall asleep halfway through. Tap like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this odd mix of boredom and history. It keeps the channel alive and the stories just sleepy enough to help you drift off again next time. I'm curious where you are drifting off from tonight. Are you tucked away in a rainy city or somewhere quiet and rural? Let me know in the comments what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights. Let the world outside grow quiet, and turn on a fan if you like that soft, steady hum in the background. Let your shoulders loosen and your breathing slow. This is your time to drift. No rush, no deadlines, no noise. Just you, a little warmth in the air, and the faint whisper of history waiting to unfold. So, settle in, and let's ease gently into tonight's journey together. You are standing in the middle of a landscape that feels less like a country and more like a forgotten ocean floor. The year is impossible to pin down exactly, perhaps somewhere in the hazy stretch of the 18th century. But out here, time does not function the way it does in the busy stone streets of Paris or London. Out here, time is measured only by the slow creep of shadows across the flat earth and the rising and falling of the water table. This is the Landes de Gascogne, a region in southwestern France that the rest of the world has largely decided to ignore. If you look to your left, you see a flat, gray expanse of scrubby bushes and dark, sandy earth. If you look to your right, you see exactly the same thing. The horizon is a perfect, unbroken line that seems to encircle you like the rim of a giant dinner plate. There are no hills to break the wind that sweeps in from the Atlantic Ocean, and there are no great forests to shelter you from the rain. There is only the heath, a vast and open wilderness that sits waiting for something to happen. The ground beneath your feet is deceptive. It looks solid enough at a glance, perhaps a bit sandy, perhaps covered in a low carpet of dried heather. But as you take a step, you feel the earth give way with a soft, sponge-like resistance. This is not firm soil. It is a layer of sand resting on top of a hard, impermeable layer of sandstone known locally as alios. This hidden layer acts like the bottom of a bathtub. When it rains, which it does often, and with great enthusiasm, the water has nowhere to go. It cannot soak deep into the earth, so it simply sits there, turning the miles of open land into a shallow, stagnant swamp. You lift your foot and the mud releases your boot with a reluctant, squelching sigh. Walking here is not a simple act of moving from one place to another. It is a constant negotiation with the terrain. In the winter, the water rises until the paths disappear entirely, and the landscape becomes a mirror, reflecting the gray clouds above. In the summer, the water retreats just enough to leave behind sticky, treacherous mud and clouds of mosquitoes that hum like a low-voltage wire in the humid air. You pull your wool cloak tighter around your shoulders. The air here is always heavy with moisture. It clings to your skin and dampens your hair. It carries the scent of wet earth, decaying leaves, and the salty tang of the ocean that lies somewhere far to the west, beyond the endless dunes. It is a lonely scent, ancient and indifferent to your presence. You are a shepherd, though that title feels almost too grand for the quiet, muddy reality of your life. Your flock is scattered around you, a collection of small, hardy sheep that are as tough and unrefined as the landscape itself. They are not the fluffy, white clouds you might see in a painting of a royal garden. These animals are ragged, their wool matted with burrs and dried mud. They keep their heads down, tearing at the coarse grasses that manage to grow in the salty soil. You watch them graze, your boots sinking slowly into the mire. This is your entire world. From the moment the sun bleaches the eastern sky pale gray until it sinks into the purple haze of the west, you are here. There are no fences to keep the sheep in place, and no barns to herd them into at the sign of a storm. The land is common ground, open to everyone and owned by no one in particular. It is a vast, free range that demands nothing from you but your presence. But your presence is difficult to maintain when the ground tries to swallow you whole. You take another step, testing a patch of moss that looks promising, but your heel breaks through the crust and you slide ankle deep into cold water. The dampness seeps through the leather of your shoe, a familiar, chilling sensation that you have known since you were a child. It is the constant companion of the people of the Landes. To live here is to be wet. You pause and lean against a solitary, stunted tree, likely an oak that has managed to claw a meager existence out of the sand. It is not much taller than you are. The wind has twisted its branches into strange, gnarled shapes, making it look like an old man hunched against the cold. You rest your hand on the rough bark and look out over the sea of brush. The furze bushes, with their sharp thorns and bright yellow flowers, stretch out as far as you can see. They are beautiful in a stark, aggressive way, but they make walking even harder. If you try to push through the brush, the thorns snag your woolen trousers and scratch at your legs. If you try to walk around them, you end up wading through the lowest, wettest parts of the moor. It is a landscape designed to keep you slow, to keep you grounded, to keep you struggling for every yard of progress. And yet you must move. Your sheep wander constantly, searching for the tender shoots of grass hidden among the rougher vegetation. If you lose sight of them, they can vanish into the brush or wander into a bog hole too deep to climb out of. So you walk, you trudge, you lift your heavy, mud-caked boots and place them down again, mile after slow mile. Your legs ache with a dull, rhythmic throb that never really goes away. It is a specific kind of exhaustion, born not from speed or heavy lifting, but from the sheer, relentless friction of the earth dragging at you. Historians still argue whether the people of this region developed their unique way of life purely out of necessity, or if there was a stubborn cultural pride in mastering such an inhospitable place. Some suggest that the isolation of the Landes created a distinct society that simply stopped caring about how the rest of France operated. While the Parisians were paving streets and building carriages, you and your ancestors were studying the mud, learning the subtle language of the swamp. The boredom here is a physical weight. It is not the boredom of having nothing to do, but the boredom of sameness. The landscape does not change. The weather changes, shifting from rain to mist to sudden, piercing sunlight, but the stage remains the same flat, desolate theater. You spend hours staring at the backs of sheep. You learn to recognize them by the shape of their ears or the specific way they limp. You count them. You count them again. You watch a hawk circle high above in the thermal currents, and you feel a pang of jealousy. The hawk does not have to worry about the mud. It sees the world from above, gliding over the thorns and the water without effort. You look down at your own feet, encased in sodden leather. There must be a better way. The thought is not new. It has drifted through the minds of everyone who has ever lived here, passed down like a folk tale. The desire to be taller, to be lighter, to be separated from the wet earth. You recall the stories of the old ones, the grandparents who spoke of the great floods of the past, when the water rose so high that the scattered farmhouses became islands. In those times, communication stopped. Families were cut off from their neighbors for weeks. The only way to travel was by boat, but the water was often too shallow for a keel and too deep for wading. It was a trap made of water and sand. Even when the floods recede, the daily reality is a test of patience. Imagine needing to cross a field to check on a stray lamb. In any other part of the world, this would take 5 minutes. Here it involves navigating a maze of hidden pools and dense thickets. You might have to detour half a mile just to cross 100 yards of distance. The inefficiency of it settles into your bones. It makes you slow. It makes your thoughts drift. The silence of the Landes is profound. It is not the empty silence of a vacuum, but a living silence filled with small, subtle sounds that you only hear when you stop moving. You hear the wind hissing through the dry heather. You hear the soft, rhythmic tearing sound of sheep grazing. You hear the distant call of a curlew, a lonely, piping sound that seems to emphasize the emptiness of the sky. There are no roads here. Not really. There are tracks, faint depressions in the grass worn down by generations of feet and hooves, but they shift with the seasons. A path that is safe in August might be a pond in November. You have to know the land by heart. You navigate by landmarks that would be invisible to a stranger. A slightly taller bush, a patch of darker sand, the skeleton of a dead tree. You adjust your hat, a wide, brimmed beret that protects your eyes from the glare of the sun on the water. The light here can be intense. When the clouds break, the sun reflects off the wet ground, creating a shimmering haze that distorts the distance. Things look closer than they are, or further away. It creates a dreamlike quality, a sense that you are walking through a painting that hasn't quite dried yet. You sit on a dry-ish tussock of grass to eat your midday meal. It is simple fare, a piece of hard bread, a wedge of cheese, perhaps an onion. You eat slowly, chewing rhythmically, matching the pace of the sheep. There is no rush. There is never a rush. The sun climbs to its zenith and begins its long descent. You have nowhere else to be. This is the job. This is the life. As you eat, you look at the horizon again. It is so flat that on a clear day, you can see the curvature of the earth, or at least you imagine you can. It feels like you are standing on a giant table. This flatness is both a blessing and a curse. It means you can see approaching storms from miles away, watching the dark curtains of rain sweep across the plains long before they reach you. But it also means there is nowhere to hide. When the rain comes, you just have to stand there and take it. You think about the people in the villages. The settlements in the Landes are few and far between, clusters of low, timber-framed houses with thatched roofs that seem to huddle together for comfort. The people there are farmers, mostly, growing rye and millet in the sandy soil. They face the same mud, the same wet winters. But you, the shepherd, you are out in it every day. You are the sentinel of the swamp. The isolation gives you time to think. Too much time, perhaps. You think about the mechanics of walking. You watch a heron standing in a pool of water nearby. It stands perfectly still on long, spindly legs, its body held high above the surface. It waits. It watches. It does not get wet feathers. It does not sink. It is perfectly adapted to this environment. You look at your own short, thick legs and feel a sense of biological inadequacy. The heron has the right idea. The afternoon wears on. The light begins to turn golden, casting long shadows across the heath. The temperature drops quickly as the sun lowers. The damp earth holds the cold, radiating it up through the soles of your boots. You stand up and stamp your feet to get the blood flowing. The squelch, squelch, squelch sound is the soundtrack of your existence. You round up the sheep, whistling a low, tuneful note that carries on the wind. They look up, chewing, and slowly begin to move. You follow them, your eyes scanning the ground for the driest rote. It is a mental map you update constantly, a grid of safe zones and danger zones. In the distance, you see a figure. It is another shepherd, miles away, a tiny speck against the darkening sky. You cannot speak to him, he is too far. You simply raise a hand in silent greeting. He raises his hand in return. Two solitary figures in a vast, empty room. This visual connection is often the only social interaction you have all day. You wonder what it would be like to cross that distance quickly, to stride over the bushes and the water like a giant, to close the gap in minutes rather than an hour of slogging. The thought is pleasing. It sits in the back of your mind, a gentle, persistent puzzle. The sun touches the horizon, turning the western sky into a blaze of orange and violet. The pools of water on the ground catch the fire of the sunset, looking like scattered shards of copper. It is breathtakingly beautiful, even if it is harsh. The Landes has a savage, quiet beauty that captures you if you let it. It is a place of moods and atmospheres, of shifting light and shadow. As twilight settles, the mosquitoes rise in earnest. You wave them away without thinking, a reflex honed by years of practice. You guide the flock toward the fold, a temporary enclosure made of hurdles that you move every few days. The sheep crowd together, a mass of warm wool and soft bleating sounds. You secure the gate. Your work is done for the day, but the walk back to your own shelter remains. You live in a small hut near the fold, a simple structure that keeps the rain off but does little to keep the cold out. You trudge toward it, your body heavy with fatigue. The mud seems to grab at your ankles with more determination now, as if trying to keep you out in the dark. You reach the door of your hut and scrape the worst of the muck off your boots. You step inside, into the gloom. You light a small fire, the peat smoke filling the small space with an acrid, comforting smell. You sit down and pull off your boots. Your feet are pale and wrinkled from the damp. You rub them, trying to bring the warmth back. This is the life of the ground walker in the Landes. It is a life of damp socks, heavy steps, and a horizon that is always too far away. It is a life that asks for a solution. It is a life that is waiting for a change. You lay back on your straw mattress, listening to the wind pick up outside. It whistles through the cracks in the walls. You close your eyes and imagine the heron again. You imagine having legs of wood that never feel the cold, legs that never tire, legs that lift you up into the clean, dry air. The image is ridiculous, of course. Men do not walk on sticks. It would be unstable. It would be dangerous. You would look foolish. But as you drift towards sleep, the idea lingers. It feels less like a fantasy and more like a plan. The boredom, the wet, the endless flat earth. They are all conspiring to push you upward. They are demanding innovation. Tomorrow, you will wake up and face the mud again. But perhaps, just perhaps, you will look at the pile of seasoned wood stacked behind the hut with a different eye. Perhaps you will pick up a piece of pine and weigh it in your hand, testing its strength. Perhaps the days of sinking are coming to an end. The night deepens. The silence of the marsh is absolute, save for the breathing of the sheep outside and the settling of the embers in your hearth. You are safe for now. You are dry for now, but the swamp is waiting. The Landes is always waiting. You drift deeper into the comfort of the dark, the rhythm of the day. Step, sink, pull. Step fades from your muscles. Your breathing slows to match the gentle currents of the air outside. The world is flat and wide and wet, but in your dreams you are tall. In your dreams you are floating. You wake up the next morning with the idea still lodged firmly in your mind, distinct and stubborn as a burr caught in wool. The grey light of dawn is just beginning to filter through the gaps in your hut's timber walls, and the air inside is cold. You can see your breath misting in front of you. Ordinarily, you would groan, roll over, and delay the inevitable moment when your feet have to touch the damp earth floor. But today is different. Today, you look at your feet, pale, somewhat flat, and entirely too close to the ground, and you decide that they have done enough work on their own. It is time to give them an upgrade. You step outside. The sheep are already stirring, bleating softly in the mist. You throw them some hay, buying yourself a few hours of peace. Then you turn your attention to the pile of wood stacked against the side of your shelter. This is the raw material of your transformation. You are not a carpenter by trade. You are a shepherd, a watcher of clouds and wool. But out here, specialization is a luxury no one can afford. If you want a chair, you build it. If you want a roof, you thatch it. And if you want to become a giant, you have to carve the legs yourself. You begin sorting through the timber. You need something specific. It cannot be too heavy, or you will never be able to lift your legs by the end of the day. It cannot be too brittle, or you will snap an ankle, perhaps literally. The first time you step in a hole, you are looking for pine, or perhaps a straight piece of ash if you can find it. You pull out a long, slender pole of pine wood. It is rough, covered in bark, and smells sharply of resin. You weigh it in your hand. It feels good. It feels like potential. You carry the wood to your bench, a crude slab of oak resting on two stumps. You take out your draw knife, a simple tool with a blade between two wooden handles. You sit down, straddling the bench, and begin to peel away the bark. The sound is satisfying, a rhythmic sh as the blade bites into the wood and slices long, curling strips away. The pale, creamy wood underneath is revealed, smooth and clean. The smell of fresh sap fills the air, sharper and cleaner than the smell of the swamp. It is the smell of progress. You are crafting what the locals call tchangues, or big legs. The design is deceptively simple, but as you work, you realize it requires a certain amount of intuitive engineering. You cannot simply strap a pole to your leg and hope for the best. That is a recipe for falling over immediately. The stilt needs to be an extension of your shin bone. You measure the wood against your own leg. You mark a spot about 5 feet up from the bottom. This is where your foot will rest. Below this mark, the wood will be the leg of the giant. Above this mark, the wood will run up along the outside of your calf to just below your knee, acting as a brace. Now comes the tricky part, the bracket. You need a secure platform for your foot to stand on. You find a sturdy block of wood and begin shaping it to match the curve of the main pole. You carve a mortise, a rectangular hole, into the main pole and shape the bracket to fit into it tightly. You hammer it in. It has to be solid. You are going to be trusting your entire weight to these 2 small blocks of wood. You test it with your hands, wiggling it. It doesn't budge. You continue shaving the main pole, tapering it slightly towards the bottom to reduce weight, but leaving it thick enough to withstand the suction of the mud. You leave the bottom end slightly flat, rather than pointed. A point would sink straight into the soft sand. You need surface area to stay on top. The sun climbs higher. The mist burns off, revealing a pale blue sky. You are sweating now, despite the chill in the air. Woodworking is warmer work than shepherding. You pause to wipe your forehead with your sleeve. You have one leg done. It looks strange lying there on the bench, a skeletal, wooden limb waiting for a body. You pick up the second piece of timber and begin again. Shh, shh, shh. The rhythm is hypnotic. It is a different kind of boredom than watching sheep. It is an active, focused monotony. By early afternoon, you have the wooden skeletons complete. But wood alone is not enough. You need bindings. You go into your hut and rummage through a chest until you find strips of leather. Some are old reins, some are scraps from shoe repair. You need them to be supple but strong. You grease them with a bit of sheep tallow, working the fat into the leather with your thumbs until it is dark and pliable. You drill holes into the wooden supports, positioning them carefully. One strap will go over your foot, locking it onto the platform. Another, wider strap will go just below your knee, securing the upper shaft of the stilt to your leg. This is the critical connection. If this strap is too loose, the stilt will wobble and you will twist your knee. If it is too tight, you will cut off the circulation and your foot will go numb, which is a disconcerting feeling when that foot is hovering 5 feet in the air. You sit on the bench and begin the assembly. You thread the leather through the holes, tying knots that you know will hold. You are building an exoskeleton. It occurs to you that you are essentially reversing the process of evolution, turning yourself back into a quadruped, or perhaps a tripod, depending on how you count. Ah, yes, the tripod. You cannot forget the third piece of the puzzle. A giant on 2 legs is unstable. A giant on 3 legs is a statue. You need a staff. You find a long, sturdy branch, longer than you are tall. You strip it and smooth it. This will be your balance point, your brake, and your resting post. Without it, you are just a man waiting to topple over. The sun is beginning to dip low again. The sheep are starting to look at you with mild concern, wondering why the human has spent all day playing with sticks instead of leading them to the good grass. You decide it is time for a test drive. You carry your new legs to a patch of firm, dry ground near the hut. You lean them against the wall. You sit on the roof of the sheep pen, which is low enough for you to climb onto, and position the stilts. You slide your right foot onto the platform. You tighten the strap over your instep. You pull the knee strap tight and buckle it. The wood presses hard against the outside of your calf. It feels stiff, alien. You do the same with the left leg. Now you are sitting on the roof, wearing 5-foot wooden extensions. You look ridiculous. If anyone were watching, they would surely laugh. But there is no one watching, only a few curious ewes chewing their cud. You take a deep breath. You grab your long staff. You push yourself off the roof. For a moment, there is a terrifying sensation of weightlessness, followed by a jarring thud as the stilts hit the ground. You wobble violently. Your center of gravity, which you have spent your entire life understanding instinctively, has suddenly shot up into your chest. You flail your arms. You jam the staff into the ground to steady yourself. You freeze. You are standing. You are tall, incredibly tall. You look down, and the ground seems dangerously far away. Your hut, which usually feels cramped and low, now looks like a dollhouse. You can see over the roof. You can see over the bushes. You can see for miles. The perspective shift is dizzying. The world has opened up. You try to take a step. Instinct tells you to bend your knee and lift your foot, just like normal walking. You try this. The stilt swings forward wildly, heavier than you expected. You lose your balance and tip sideways. You plant the staff frantically, but it slips on a patch of wet grass. You go down. Falling from 5 feet up is different from falling from normal height. You have time to think about the mistake on the way down. You land hard in the dirt, tangled in your wooden limbs. The sheep scatter, startled by the crashing giant. You lie there for a moment, staring at the sky, checking your ribs. Nothing broken, only your dignity. You unbuckle the straps, untangle yourself, and climb back onto the roof. You try again. This time you understand that you cannot walk like a human. You have to walk like a stilt walker. You have to keep your legs straighter. You have to swing them from the hip, using the momentum of the wood. It is a pendulum motion. Swing, plant, swing, plant. You take one step. You wobble, but you hold. You take another. The wood clacks against a stone. The sound is distinct. A hollow, wooden click that will become the signature sound of your life. Click. Click. You make it 10 yards before you fall again. This time you land in a puddle. The cold water soaks your shirt, but you are laughing. You are actually laughing. Because for those 10 yards, you were flying. You were gliding over the roughness of the ground without feeling a thing. You spend the rest of the evening practicing. Up, walk, fall. Up, walk, fall. Your shins are chafed raw where the wood rubs against them. Your muscles ache in places you didn't know you had muscles. The sides of your hips, your lower back, your shoulders from leaning on the staff. It is physically brutal work. But with every attempt, you learn something. You learn to read the ground from above. You learn that you cannot stop moving. Momentum is your friend. If you stop without the staff, you tip. To stay upright, you have to keep stepping. It is a lesson in perpetual motion. By the time the light fails completely, you can walk in a straight line for 50 paces without falling. You are exhausted, bruised, and covered in mud, but you feel a strange sense of victory. You have hacked the landscape. You have cheated the swamp. You untie the stilts and leave them leaning against the hut. They look like sentinels guarding your door. You go inside and eat your supper with trembling hands. You are tired, but your mind is racing. You are thinking about adjustments. You need to wrap the knee brace in sheepskin to stop the chafing. You need to widen the foot platform slightly. You need a loop on your belt to hold the staff when you aren't using it. You realize that these pieces of wood are not just tools. They are a new anatomy. You are going to modify your body to fit the world, rather than trying to modify the world to fit you. As you lie in bed that night, you can still feel the phantom sensation of height. You feel the sway, the precarious balance. It is like the feeling you get after being on a boat all day, where the ground seems to rock beneath you. You close your eyes and imagine the next day. You imagine walking out to the flock, not slogging through the mud, but stepping over it. You imagine crossing the deep channels where the water usually comes up to your waist, and your feet staying perfectly dry. You imagine the view. You saw things today from your new height that you had never noticed before. A bird's nest hidden in the top of a bush, the way the wind creates patterns in the grass that are invisible from the ground. The engineering is simple. 2 sticks, a few straps, a bit of geometry. But the result is magical. You have unlocked a vertical dimension in a horizontal world. You have become the tallest thing on the horizon. Historians often debate who the first person was to strap wood to their legs in the Landes. Was it a shepherd like you? Was it a postman tired of wet mail? Or was it, as some local legends suggest, a baker who wanted to keep his flour dry? We will never know his name. But tonight, in the quiet of your hut, you feel a kinship with that anonymous inventor. You understand the spark that led to the fire. It wasn't glory. It was simply the desire to keep your socks dry. The smell of the pine shavings still clings to your clothes, a sharp, clean perfume. It masks the smell of the damp earth. You drift off to sleep with a smile, your aching legs twitching as they remember the feeling of the swing. Tomorrow, the real test begins. Tomorrow, you take the sheep out. Tomorrow, you introduce your flock to their new, towering master. You wonder if they will recognize you. You wonder if the dog will bark at the strange wooden creature you have become. But mostly, you wonder how far you can go. The horizon looked different from up there. It looked reachable. You slide into sleep, dreaming of strides that cover 3 yards at a time. You dream of walking over the tops of the trees. You dream of a life where the mud is just a memory, a dark surface far below your floating feet. The stilts are waiting outside, tall and silent in the moonlight, ready to carry you into a new era. You are standing tall. The morning sun is just burning through the mist, and you are watching it happen from an altitude of 10 feet. 5 feet of man, 5 feet of pine. Your sheep are scattered below you like gray stones dropped on a green carpet. To them, you are a confusing new deity, a towering figure that moves with a strange, clacking gait. The first time you walked among them, they bolted, terrified by the wooden giant invading their pasture. Now, a few days later, they have accepted your transformation with the placid indifference of livestock. As long as the giant leads them to grass, they do not care how many legs he has. This is your new normal. You spend your days in the air. It is a strange, suspended existence. You are physically disconnected from the earth, hovering in a layer of atmosphere that feels cleaner, drier, and distinctly more lonely. The mud, the wet heather, the stagnant pools, they are all down there, separate from you. You look down at the landscape like a general surveying a map. You can see the patterns of the swamp, the dry ridges that snake through the marshes, the hidden bogs that would swallow a cow whole. You navigate this terrain not by feel, but by sight, planning your route 3 steps ahead. The act of walking has become second nature, though it is a completely different mechanical process than what you were born with. You do not lift your knees, you swing from the hip. It is a long, loping stride that eats up distance. A normal man takes 2 steps to cover a yard. You cover that in a single, lazy swing. You can outpace a horse at a trot, provided the ground isn't too soft. You feel powerful, efficient. You are a human-machine hybrid, powered by bread and cheese, designed for the specific purpose of traversing a wetland. But mostly, you are still. Shepherding is 90% waiting and 10% panic. On the ground, the waiting was tedious. You would sit on a cold rock or lean against a wet tree. Up here, waiting is an art form. You have your staff, your third leg. When the sheep settle in to graze, you plant the staff firmly in the ground behind you. You lean back against it, forming a perfect tripod. The leather straps dig slightly into your shins, but the sheepskin padding you added makes it bearable. You lock your knees, you relax your muscles, and you just hang there. You are a statue in the middle of the wilderness. You can stay like this for hours without moving a muscle. It is incredibly peaceful. The wind blows past your face, unobstructed by the brush. You are above the worst of the mosquitoes, which tend to swarm closer to the stagnant water. You are in your own private stratum of air. From this vantage point, you see everything. You see a fox creeping through the gorse a half-mile away, its orange coat bright against the brown scrub. You see the shimmer of heat rising from the sand dunes in the distance. You see the weather coming long before it arrives. You watch a rain squall sweep in from the Atlantic, a dark gray curtain drawn across the sky. You have time to wrap your heavy wool cloak tight, pull down your beret, and brace yourself. When the rain hits, it feels different up here. It feels cleaner, washing over you rather than soaking up from below. The solitude is deeper now. On the ground, you are part of the landscape. On stilts, you are an observer. You feel a profound sense of separation from the world below. It is quiet. The only sounds are the wind in your ears and the occasional bleat of a sheep. You find yourself talking to the dog more often, your voice drifting down to him from above. He looks up, tail wagging, accustomed to his master's new celestial status. You develop quirks to deal with the isolation. You start naming the clouds. You calculate complex math problems in your head. How many strides to the horizon? How many sheep in a square mile? You compose songs that match the rhythm of your walking. Click-clack, click-clack. The rhythm gets into your head. It becomes the metronome of your thoughts. One afternoon, you spot another stilt, walker in the distance. This is becoming more common now as the idea spreads. He is far away, a silhouette against the sun. He looks like a giant mantis, stalking through the brush. You raise your staff in greeting. He raises his. You watch him for a while. He is moving fast, likely heading to the market or carrying a message. You wonder who he is. A neighbor, a stranger from the next parish. It doesn't matter. You are members of the same tribe now, the tribe of the tchangues. You share a secret understanding of what it means to live above the ground. There are practical challenges to this life, of course. Dropping something is a tragedy. If your knife slips from your belt and falls into the heather, you stare at it with a mix of despair and calculation. Is it worth the effort? To retrieve it, you have to unbuckle, climb down, which usually means finding a tree or a fence to lean on. Pick it up, climb back up, and rebuckle. It is a 20-minute operation. You learn to tie everything to yourself. Your knife, your gourd of water, your pouch of tobacco. Everything is tethered with strings. You look like a traveling merchant, draped in dangling necessities. And then there is the wind. The Landes is flat, and the wind from the ocean can be fierce. On the ground, you could crouch behind a bush. On stilts, you are a sail. A strong gust can catch your cloak and spin you around, threatening to topple you. You learn to lean into the wind, adjusting your center of gravity constantly. You become a master of balance, reading the air currents like a sailor reads the sea. But there are moments of pure magic that make the struggle worth it. One evening, as the sun is setting, you find yourself walking through a patch of tall mist. The fog is low, hugging the ground like a white blanket. It covers the sheep completely. You can only hear them moving. But you are above it. Your head and shoulders are in the clear, golden light of the setting sun, while your feet are lost in the gray swirl. You are walking on clouds. You look around and see the tops of the pine trees floating like islands in a white sea. It is a surreal, dreamlike vision. You stop and watch until the light fades, feeling like the last man on earth. The relationship with your flock changes, too. You can see trouble before it happens. You spot a stray dog approaching the lambs from a mile away, and can whistle your own dog to intercept it before the sheep even look up. You can see a lamb stuck in a briar patch that would have been invisible from the ground. You are a benevolent, all-seeing guardian. The sheep seem to sense this. They stay closer to your towering form, perhaps seeing you as a mobile tree, a landmark to orient themselves by. There is a strange intimacy in this aloofness. You are watching the secret life of the marsh. You see birds nesting. You see hares boxing in the spring. You see the way the water flows and pools after a storm. You understand the hydrology of the region better than any engineer from Paris ever could. You know which patches of green mean good grass and which mean bottomless mud. You also learn the limits of your new body. Your legs, your real legs, get cold. The blood has to pump uphill a long way. You wear thick woolen stockings, sometimes 2 or 3 pairs. You wrap the tops of your stilts in fur, but still on frosty mornings, your toes feel like stones. You have to keep moving to keep the circulation going. The stillness that is your greatest asset is also your enemy in the winter. And falling, you don't fall often anymore, but when you do, it is memorable. You trip on a hidden root, or a strap snaps. The world tilts. The ground rushes up. You learn to fall loosely, to roll. You learn to protect your head. And you learn the humiliation of lying in the mud, a tangled mess of wood and wool, while the sheep look on with mild judgment. Getting back up without a tree or a fence is an acrobatic feat that requires immense upper body strength and a lot of cursing. You learn to avoid falling at all costs. Historians still argue about the social structure of these stilt walking communities. Was it a lonely life? Or did the shared experience create a tight, knit bond? There are stories of shepherds meeting in the middle of the moors, leaning on their staffs and chatting for hours, shouting across the gap between them. A high-altitude conversation. You have had a few of these. You meet a man from the next village. You compare stilts. He has used oak, you prefer pine. He uses a different knot for his straps. You debate the merits of different wood treatments. It is shop talk, specialized and technical. One day, you encounter a group of travelers crossing the Landes on foot. They are not locals. They are city people, perhaps merchants taking a shortcut, though they clearly regret it. They are struggling. Their boots are caked with mud, their clothes are wet, and they look miserable. They stop when they see you approaching. They stare, mouths open. To them, you are a monster, a folklore creature come to life, a giant striding through the swamp. You stop 10 yards away and look down at them. "Good day," you say, your voice calm. "Good day." One of them stammers, craning his neck. Is it deep ahead? You look at the path they are taking. "Waist deep in the hollows," you say. "Better to go round by the old oak." You point with your staff. They thank you profusely. You watch them slog away, splashing and cursing. You feel a twinge of pity, but mostly a sense of superiority. You turn and stride effortlessly over the very bog they are trying to avoid. Click, clack, click, clack. You are the master of this domain. The evenings are the hardest part of the transition. Coming down is a shock. You reach your hut as the light fails. You sit on the bench. You unbuckle the straps. You lower your feet to the ground. You stand up. You feel impossibly short, heavy, slow. You walk into your hut, and it feels like you are crawling. The floor feels too close to your face. You have spent 12 hours as a giant, and now you are just a man again. It takes time to adjust. You stumble around your own kitchen, your balance calibrated for a different altitude. You sit by the fire, rubbing your shins where the wood pressed against them. The skin is tough now, calloused. Your body is adapting. You are evolving into the shape of the tool. You eat your soup, listening to the wind. You miss the view. Down here, you can only see the walls. Up there, you could see the world. You realize that you are becoming addicted to the height. The ground feels claustrophobic. As you lie in bed, you think about the next day. You plan your route. You will go to the western ridge, where the grass is sweet. You will stand on the highest dune and look for the ocean. You have heard that on a clear day, from the top of your stilts on top of a dune. You can see the white line of the surf miles away. You want to see it. You are no longer just a shepherd. You are a tchangue. The word defines you. It separates you from the earthbound. You drift off to sleep, your legs twitching. your inner ear remembering the sway of the wind. You are dreaming of the sky. You are dreaming of the silence of the upper air. You are dreaming of the long, slow stride that carries you over the troubles of the world without ever touching them. You might think that after mastering the art of walking on stilts, the challenge would be over. But the human body has needs that do not disappear just because you are 5 feet taller. You still get tired. You still need to eat. You still get bored. And so, the shepherds of the Landes faced a new engineering problem. How do you live your life without ever coming down? If getting up and down takes 20 minutes and a convenient roof to lean on, you are not going to do it just to eat lunch or take a nap. You have to learn to do everything while balancing on 2 wooden poles. The most important invention for this stationary life is the staff. We mentioned it before, the third leg of the tripod. But it is more than just a kickstand. It is a multi-tool. It is a weapon against wolves, a crook for hooking sheep, and, most crucially, a seat. The shepherds developed a specific way of leaning back against the staff. You plant the end firmly into the ground at an angle behind you. You lean your weight back, locking your knees and letting the staff take the load of your upper body. The top of the staff often has a small, padded crosspiece or a simple knob that fits into the small of your back or under your shoulder. Once you are locked into this position, you are surprisingly stable. You are a triangle, the strongest geometric shape. You can relax your muscles. Your legs, which are essentially acting as pillars, do not need to do much work. You can stand like this for hours. And in this position, with your hands free, the real mastery begins. Knitting is the first skill you master. It seems absurd. A giant shepherd hovering in a swamp, knitting socks. But it is the most common sight in the Landes. You have hours of idle time while the sheep graze. You cannot read. Books are rare and expensive, and your hands need something to do. So, you pull a ball of wool from your pouch, which hangs from your belt, dangling near your knees, and a set of needles. You begin to click away. Click, clack go your feet when you walk. Click, click go the needles when you rest. You knit socks, naturally. You knit hats. You knit sweaters. The wool is from your own sheep, raw and greasy with lanolin, which keeps your hands soft despite the cold wind. There is something deeply hypnotic about knitting 5 feet in the air. You are creating warmth while standing in the chill. You look down at your work, then up at the horizon, then back down. A row of stitches, a scan for wolves, a row of stitches. It is a rhythm of vigilance and creation. But what if you want to sleep? Surely you have to come down to sleep. Not necessarily. The shepherds perfected the art of the vertical nap. It sounds impossible, like a horse sleeping standing up. But with practice, it becomes second nature. You find a spot where the ground is firm so your stilts won't sink unevenly. You plant your staff deep. You wrap your cloak tightly around you, turning yourself into a wool cocoon. You hook your arms over the staff or clasp your hands in front of you. You lower your chin to your chest, and you drift off. It is not a deep REM cycle sleep. It is a light, dozing state, a shepherd's sleep. You are still aware of the wind, the bleating of the sheep, the shifting of your own balance. If you start to tip, your inner ear wakes you instantly, and you correct your posture with a small shuffle of your feet. It is a precarious rest, but it is enough to refresh you during the long, hot afternoons. Imagine the scene: a vast, empty plain under a midday sun. Silence, except for the buzzing of insects. And there, standing motionless in the middle of nowhere, is a figure wrapped in a brown cloak, towering over the bushes, fast asleep. He looks like an ancient monolith, a standing stone with a beret. Eating is another logistical challenge. You carry your food in a satchel slung over your shoulder or tied to your waist. Bread, cheese, perhaps a piece of dried sausage or an onion. Eating while standing on stilts requires balance. You cannot make sudden movements. You slice your cheese carefully. You manage your crumbs, watching them fall 5 feet to the ground, where the dog snaps them up before they hit the mud. Drinking is trickier. You carry a gourd or a leather skin. Tilting your head back to drink changes your center of gravity. You learn to spread your legs slightly wider, to plant your feet firmly before taking a swig. And you learn never, ever to drink too much wine. A drunk shepherd on the ground is a tragedy. A drunk shepherd on stilts is a catastrophe waiting to happen. The tipsy tumble is a legendary source of local humor, usually resulting in a spectacular splash and a very bruised ego. The weather adds another layer of complexity to this stationary life. When it rains, you cannot seek shelter under a tree, because the trees are shorter than you are. You are the lightning rod. You are the highest point in the landscape. So, you wear a heavy sheepskin coat, wool side in, leather side out. The rain runs off the oiled leather. You have a wide, brimmed hat. You turn your back to the wind and hunch your shoulders. You become a waterproof spire. You wait it out. You watch the water rise around the bottoms of your stilts, grateful that your feet are high and dry. In the winter, when the frost covers the heather in a glittering white coat, staying still is dangerous. You get cold. So the shepherds developed games, contests of agility. One popular pastime is picking up the pebble. You drop a pebble on the ground. The goal is to bend down and pick it up without falling over. This requires a terrifying display of flexibility. You have to bend at the waist, keeping your legs straight, because you cannot bend your knees much in the stilts and reach all the way down past your wooden shins. You look like a folding ruler. If you overbalance, you faceplant into the dirt. If you succeed, you straighten up with a triumphant grin, holding the pebble aloft. It is a pointless skill, but it passes the time and keeps you warm. Another game is the stilt race. Young shepherds, full of bravado, challenge each other. They line up on a flat stretch of marsh. Someone shouts, "Go," and the race is on. It is a chaotic, clattering spectacle. Stilts collide, shepherds stumble. But they can move surprisingly fast, bounding over the ground like panicked ostriches. The winner gets bragging rights, the losers get wet. There is also the music. Many shepherds carry a simple flute or a fife. The sound of a flute drifting across the desolate moors is haunting. It is a thin, lonely melody that seems to dissolve into the vastness of the sky. You play to the sheep. You play to the wind. You play to keep the silence at bay. Sometimes, on a quiet evening, you can hear another shepherd playing miles away, a faint echo answering your tune. It is a musical conversation across the void. But mostly, the art of resting while standing is about observation. You become a naturalist by default. You watch the spiders spinning webs in the gorse bushes, looking down into the intricate structures. You watch the snakes sunning themselves on logs. You see the seasonal changes in microscopic detail. The first bud of the heather, the first yellowing leaf of the birch. You have the perspective of a low, flying bird. Historians debate whether this constant elevation affected the shepherd's psychology. Did looking down on the world make them feel superior, or did the vulnerability of their position, perched on sticks, exposed to the elements, make them feel fragile? It was likely a mix of both. You felt distinct, separate. You were the stilt people, different from the mud people, who farmed the few patches of dry land. One curious side effect of the stilt lifestyle is the development of stilt legs. Not the wooden ones, but your real ones. Your calf muscles adapt to the strange way you walk. You don't use the full range of motion of your ankle. You walk flat, footed on the platform. Your hips and thighs do the work. Old shepherds often had a distinctive gait, even when they were on the ground, a rolling, wide-legged walk that betrayed their years in the air. There were rumors, too, of shepherds who became so accustomed to their stilts that they refused to take them off, even when they went home. Stories of men who would eat dinner at the table while sitting on the roof of the house, passing their plate down through the chimney. These are likely tall tales, pun intended, but they speak to the deep identification with the tools. The stilts were not just transport. They were identity. The skill of idling on stilts also involved social signaling. If you saw a shepherd standing perfectly still, leaning on his staff, facing east, it might mean all is well. If he was waving his staff or walking in tight circles, it might mean wolf or lost sheep. They developed a semaphore system, a language of posture. A tilted staff meant one thing, a raised hat meant another. Information could travel across the moors faster than a horse could gallop, passed from one towering sentinel to the next. You recall a specific afternoon in late summer. The heat is oppressive. The air is still. You are drowsy. You plant your staff and lean back. You close your eyes. You hear the buzzing of a dragonfly. It zips past your ear. You open one eye and see it hovering right in front of your face, iridescent blue wings shimmering. It lands on the tip of your nose. You freeze. You are part of the scenery now, a wooden tree that breathes. The dragonfly stays for a moment, then darts away. You smile. It is a small moment, insignificant in the grand sweep of history, but it is yours. It is a secret shared between you and the insect, 5 feet above the mud. As the sun begins to lower, casting those long, dramatic shadows that make the stilts look like spider legs stretching for 50 yards, you prepare to move again. You have to wake your legs up. You wiggle your toes inside your boots. You shift your weight. You lift the staff. The transition from statue to walker takes a moment of focus. You are stiff. But once you take that first swinging step, the rhythm returns. Click, clack. You round up the flock. They know the drill. They move ahead of you, a flowing river of wool. You follow behind, the shepherd in the sky. You feel a deep, quiet satisfaction. You have spent another day without touching the earth. You have floated through life. You think about the people in the cities, sitting in chairs, walking on cobblestones, their heads always at the same level. How boring, how limited. They never know the thrill of the sway, the danger of the wobble, the peace of the tripod rest. They never know what it is like to sleep while standing in the wind. You head toward the sunset, a solitary figure etched against the burning sky. You are tired, yes. Your back aches. But you are high. You are dry. and you are master of the swamp. You leave the silence of the marshes behind you. The transition is gradual at first. The scattered sheep trails begin to merge into wider, beaten paths, and the endless horizon of scrub brush is broken by the distant, angular shapes of rooftops. You are heading into the village. For a ground walker, a trip to town is a simple matter of walking down a road. For you, a shepherd on stilts, it is a delicate navigational challenge that requires the precision of a harbor pilot guiding a ship into a crowded port. You can see the church spire rising above the trees, a stone finger pointing at the sky. For most of the week, you and that spire are the only vertical things in the world. As you draw closer, the familiar smells of the wild, wet earth, pine resin, sheep wool, are replaced by the sense of civilization. You smell wood smoke, denser and more concentrated than your solitary campfire. You smell baking bread, a rich, yeasty aroma that makes your stomach tighten. You smell the sharp tang of unwashed humanity and the manure of horses, which is distinct from the manure of sheep. You enter the outskirts of the village. The ground changes beneath your wooden feet. The soft, forgiving sponge of the peat bog gives way to hard, packed dirt, and then, as you reach the main street, to cobblestones. Cobblestones are the enemy. They are slick, uneven, and hard. There is no give when your stilt hits them. The wood skids slightly with every step, sending a vibration rattling up through your shin bones. You have to shorten your stride. You have to pay attention. The village is bustling. It is market day. From your vantage point, the crowd looks like a shifting mosaic of hats and bonnets. You are a giant wading through a river of people. You tower over the carts, the donkeys, and the pedestrians. The locals are used to this spectacle. They part around you like water around a piling. They know better than to get in the way of a moving tripod. A kick from a wooden stilt can break a foot, and the shepherds have the right of way by sheer virtue of their mass and momentum. You navigate the narrow street. This brings new hazards. In the open marsh, the sky is the limit. Here, you have to worry about headroom. You duck your head to avoid low, hanging signs swinging outside the taverns. You weave to avoid the overhanging eaves of the houses. You have to watch out for washing lines strung across the alleyways. Getting a pair of wet bloomers caught on your face, while trying to look dignified, is a humiliation you want to avoid. Buying supplies is a unique logistical operation. You do not get down. Dismounting is a 20-minute process requiring a wall or a sturdy fence, and there is simply no space for that in the crush of the market. So, commerce happens vertically. You approach the bakery. The window is open, and the smell of hot dough is overpowering. You tap on the wooden shutter with your staff. The baker's wife appears. She doesn't look up with surprise. She looks up with recognition. She knows the drill. She reaches for a long, handled wooden peel, the same tool she uses to slide loaves into the oven. She places a round, crusty loaf on the end of it and lifts it up towards you. You take the bread, tucking it into your satchel. Now comes the payment. You fish a coin out of your pouch. You have to be careful. If you drop a coin in the marsh, it is gone forever. If you drop up a coin here, it might vanish into the pocket of a quick urchin. You lean down as far as you dare, holding the coin between your thumb and forefinger. The baker's wife holds up a small basket on a pole, or perhaps she just holds out her apron. You drop the coin. It lands with a dull clink. Transaction complete. The drive-through window was invented here, in the swamps of Gascony, 2 centuries before the automobile. You move on. You need salt. You need tobacco. You engage in these aerial transactions all down the street. You are a customer in the clouds. But the market is not just about shopping, it is about information. The village is the nerve center of the region, and you effectively have a VIP box seat. You drift toward the square where the other shepherds have gathered. There is an unspoken rule about where the stilt walkers park. You find a spot near the wall of the inn, where the eaves provide some shade. You plant your staff and lean back. Beside you are 3 other men on stilts. You nod. They nod. You are a fraternity of the high altitude. You look down at the groundlings, scurrying about below. It is hard not to feel a certain detachment. They are so busy, so low, so muddy. They are worrying about puddles that you stepped over without a thought. They are shouting to be heard in the crush, while your heads are up in the clear air, having a quiet conversation. Grass is dry on the western ridge. One shepherd murmurs, lighting a pipe. Wolves took a lamb near the old mill. Another replies, the smoke from his pipe drifting down towards the crowd. Price of wool is up, says a third. This is the news feed of the Landes. You catch up on the movements of herds. The weather patterns observed from different corners of the swamp and the local politics. But you also hear things you aren't supposed to hear. Being on stilts in a village means your head is level with the second-story windows. This is a dangerous and fascinating superpower. As you walk down the residential streets, you are not looking at front doors. You are looking into bedrooms and upper parlors. You see a merchant counting his money in a room he thought was private. You see a mother rocking a cradle. You hear arguments that were meant to be kept behind closed doors. You learn to be discreet. You learn to look straight ahead, or at least to pretend to. But the secrets of the village float out to you. You know who is sleeping until noon. You know who is burning their dinner. You are the unintentional spy of the skyline. And then there is the romance. Courting a sweetheart while standing 5 feet in the air presents significant mechanical difficulties, but also a certain undeniable flair. You spot a girl you know, perhaps the daughter of a farmer whose land borders your grazing range. She is walking near the fountain with her friends. You adjust your beret. You smooth your cloak. You initiate the approach. You stride towards her. The click-clack of your stilts announces your arrival. She looks up, shielding her eyes against the sun. To her, you are a silhouette, a dashing figure cut against the sky, or perhaps just a very tall man with dirty knees. It depends on her perspective. You stop and plant your staff. You lean down, creating that precarious, folding ruler angle. You are hovering over her. It is an intense dynamic. You are physically overwhelming, yet you are also vulnerable. If she were to push your staff, you would go down like a felled tree. Good day, Marie, you say, your voice dropping down from the heavens. Good day, she replies, craning her neck. You chat. You cannot whisper sweet nothings, because you are too far apart. You have to speak clearly, which means her friends and half the market can hear you. It forces a certain poetic efficiency. You cannot be coy. The heather is blooming early this year. You offer. Is it? She asks. I haven't been out to the high ground. I brought you something. You say. You reach into your pouch. You have found a particularly perfect blue stone, or perhaps a rare feather from a marsh hawk. You drop it gently. It flutters down, or falls straight down, in the case of the stone, and she catches it. It is a gift from the upper world. If you are truly serious, and if the village architecture allows it, you might employ the balcony strategy. If she lives in a 2-story house, you can simply walk up to her window. While other suitors have to throw pebbles at the glass or climb trellises like thieves, you just walk up and knock. You can lean your elbows on her windowsill and chat face to face, your stilts resting in the flower bed below. It is the most convenient Romeo and Juliet scenario in history. You are the only man who can kiss a girl in a 2-story window without leaving the ground. Of course, this height advantage has its downsides. You cannot dance with her. Not really. Not in the traditional way. If there is a festival, and there often is, the Gascons love a reason to celebrate. The square fills with music. The fiddles and hurdy-gurdies start up a lively tune. The groundlings spin and stomp, kicking up dust. You and your brethren stand on the periphery, watching. You tap your wooden feet to the rhythm. Click, click, click. But the urge to move is strong. And sometimes the stilts are not a barrier to dancing, they are an instrument. The stilt dance is a terrifying spectacle to behold. A group of young shepherds, perhaps fueled by a bit too much red wine, clear a circle in the crowd. They begin to move. It is not the graceful waltz of the ballroom. It is a high-energy, clattering stomp. They hop. They twirl. They kick their wooden legs out in synchronized high kicks that whiz over the heads of the nervous spectators. They link arms, or rather, they link staffs, and spin in a great towering wheel. The centrifugal force is immense. If one person slips, the whole structure collapses in a heap of timber and wool. But when it works, it is magnificent. It is a celebration of balance and defiance. You watch them, feeling the vibration of their stomping in your own souls. You might even join in, linking onto the end of the line, throwing your weight into the spin, laughing as the world blurs into a streak of color below you. After the excitement, you retire to the tavern, but you do not go inside. The ceilings are too low and the floor is too crowded. Instead, the tavern comes to you. There is a designated area outside, perhaps a high bench or just a convenient wall. The landlord brings out a tray with tall glasses. You and your friends lean against the wall, sipping your wine. You look at the tourists, travelers from Paris or Bordeaux, who have stopped to gawk. They are sketching you in their notebooks. They point and whisper. To them, you are a curiosity, a relic of a primitive world. They wonder how you don't fall. They wonder why you don't just walk on the ground like civilized people. You take a sip of wine and look over their heads. They don't understand. They don't know what it is to walk through a swamp without getting wet. They don't know the efficiency of the stride. They are trapped by the mud. You have transcended it. Let them stare. As the afternoon wears on, the shadows lengthen. The market begins to pack up. The noise subsides. It is time to return to the solitude. You finish your wine. Pay the landlord, dropping the coins into his cupped hands, and push off from the wall. Leaving the village is always a strange sensation. You turn your back on the warmth, the food, and the human connection. You face the darkening heath. You navigate the cobblestones again, more careful now that the light is fading. You pass the last house, where a dog barks at you from a safe distance. You hit the dirt path, and then the soft, springy turf of the marsh. Your stride lengthens. You fall back into the rhythm. Click-clack, click-clack. The smell of wood smoke fades, replaced by the cool, damp air of the evening. The noise of the crowd is replaced by the singing of the crickets. You are going home, not to a house, but to your hut in the middle of nowhere. You feel a sense of relief washing over you. The village was loud. It was chaotic. It required too much attention. Out here, there is only the horizon. You look down at your satchel. You have fresh bread. You have tobacco. You have a ribbon you bought, perhaps to tie onto your staff for luck, or perhaps to give to that girl next week. You are self-sufficient again. The moon is rising, a pale disk reflected in the pools of standing water. You can see your own shadow stretching out across the heather. A monstrous, spindly giant striding across the world. You feel a sudden surge of affection for your stilts. They are your passport to this freedom. In the village, they made you a spectacle. Out here, they make you a king. You wonder idly what the villagers are doing now. Sitting in their low chairs, staring at their low walls. It seems a cramped existence. You take a deep breath of the high, clear air. You are happy to be back in the upper atmosphere. You check your bearings by the stars. You know exactly where you are. You are 10 feet tall, and the night is young. You pick up the pace, your wooden legs eating up the miles, carrying you deeper into the silence that you love so much. The gossip of the market fades into memory, leaving only the rhythmic sound of wood striking earth, the heartbeat of the Landes. The change begins not with a roar, but with a rumor. It travels across the open heath, the way news always does in the Landes, passed from a shepherd on the eastern ridge to a resin gatherer in the south, shouted across a canal, and finally drifting up to you like smoke. The rumor is simple and confusing. They say the emperor in Paris has decided that the swamp is a mistake. They say he intends to fix it. You stand on your stilts, looking out over the miles of familiar, watery scrub, and you struggle to understand the concept. The swamp is not a mistake. It is the world. It is the ground. It is the reason you have legs of wood and a flock of sheep. How does one fix a landscape that has existed since the beginning of memory? You dismiss it as city talk, the kind of nonsense that comes from people who have never had to pull a sheep out of a bog. But then the men arrive. You see them from miles away. They are not shepherds. They do not move with the loping, rhythmic gait of the tchangues. They walk on the ground, stumbling occasionally in the heather. They carry strange equipment, brass instruments on tripods that glint in the sun. You watch them with a mixture of suspicion and professional curiosity. You recognize the shape of the tripod. It is the same geometry that keeps you upright when you rest. But these men are not resting. They are measuring. They set up their theodolites and peer through lenses. They wave their arms. They drive stakes into the soft earth with wooden mallets. Thud, thud. The sound carries on the wind, a dull, artificial percussion that disrupts the usual symphony of bird calls and bleating sheep. They are drawing lines across your open world. They are imposing a grid upon the chaos of the marsh. You stay away from them, hovering on the periphery like a ghost. You are a creature of the old way, and they are the heralds of the new. You watch as they consult large sheets of paper that flap in the breeze. They point at the horizon, your horizon, and nod. They are planning something vast. Then comes the digging. This is not the work of a few local farmers clearing a ditch. This is an army of laborers with shovels. They slice into the peat and the sand. They dig long, straight trenches that stretch for miles, cutting across the natural meander of the land. They are attacking the earth. You watch from your high vantage point as the network of canals takes shape. It looks like a scar. The dark, wet soil is piled high on the banks. And then, something miraculous and terrible happens. The water begins to move. For centuries, the water of the Landes has been stagnant, sitting in shallow pools, going nowhere. Now it finds a path. It trickles into the ditches. The trickles become streams. The streams flow toward the rivers and the sea. You notice the difference in the ground beneath your stilts. Places that used to be impassable slurry, deep enough to suck a wooden leg down to the knee, begin to firm up. The sucking sound of your steps changes to a duller, solid impact. The standing pools that reflected the sky begin to shrink, leaving behind rings of drying mud. The mosquitoes, your ancient enemies, seem confused. Their breeding grounds are draining away. The air feels slightly drier, less heavy with the humidity of the swamp. It is a subtle shift, but you feel it in your lungs. You are breathing a different atmosphere. And then come the seeds. You expected them to plant wheat or corn, to turn the drained land into farms. That is what people usually do with land. But the soil of the Landes is poor, sandy, and acidic. It will not support a field of grain. So, the government has a different plan. They are planting trees. Not just a few trees for shade. They are planting a forest. They are sowing the seeds of the maritime pine, a tough, resinous tree that loves the sand. You watch the sowers walking in lines, casting the seeds by the handful. It looks like a ritual. They are seeding the future. At first, nothing changes. A seed is a small thing, invisible from 5 feet up. The landscape looks as flat and brown as ever. You continue your rounds, guiding your sheep through the drying heather. You tell yourself that a tree takes a lifetime to grow. You tell yourself that you will be an old man before this forest is anything more than a patch of weeds. But the maritime pine is in a hurry. The first spring after the sowing, you see them. Millions of tiny green shoots pushing up through the sand. They look harmless, like moss. Your sheep, always eager for a new snack, try to nibble on them. You whistle and tap your staff, driving them away. You have heard the new laws. The golden tree is protected. A shepherd whose flock damages the saplings faces fines that would ruin him. Suddenly, your job has become harder. Before, the land was a free for all. Now, it is a nursery. You have to watch every step. You have to keep the sheep moving. Keep them away from the precious green fuzz that is covering the earth. The freedom of the open range is beginning to tighten. Seasons pass. The fuzz becomes a carpet. The carpet becomes a brush. The saplings are knee-high now. They are jagged, bristly little things, dark green and vigorous. They catch the wind, making a sound you are not used to. A soft, rushing whisper, different from the dry rattle of the heather. You walk among them. Your stilts are still necessary, or so you tell yourself. The ground is drier, yes, but the brush is thick. It is easier to step over the young trees than to push through them. You are still the giant. You still tower over the landscape, but the landscape is rising to meet you. The visual texture of your world is changing. For your entire life, the dominant color has been the dusty brown of dried fern and the purple of heather, punctuated by the silver of water. Now, the dominant color is green, a deep, dark, monochromatic green. It swallows the light. It hides the ground. You find yourself navigating differently. The old landmarks, the twisted oak, the peculiar-shaped dune, are disappearing behind the screen of young pines. The horizon, which used to be a perfect circle, is becoming jagged. The view is shrinking. One day, you realize that the trees are waist high to a man on the ground. To you, they are just below your knees. You are wading through a sea of pine needles. The scent is overpowering. It is sharp, clean, and medicinal. It smells like turpentine. It clears your head, but it also stings your eyes when the sun heats the resin. The wildlife is changing, too. The birds of the open moor, the curlews, the lapwings are leaving. They need open space to nest. In their place, new birds are arriving. Jays, wood pigeons, birds that like the shadows of the branches. You see squirrels, creatures that would have been absurd in the treeless swamp. They scramble up the young trunks, chattering at you. You look at them with disdain. You are a creature of the sky. They are creatures of the wood. The silence of the Landes, that profound, empty silence you loved, is being filled. The wind playing through millions of pine needles creates a constant, low frequency roar, like the sound of a distant ocean. It is a soothing sound in a way, but it is a wall of noise. It masks the approach of storms. It masks the sound of stray sheep. You have to listen harder. The drainage continues. The canals are deepened. The water table drops further. The ground is now firm enough that a man in regular boots can walk almost anywhere without getting wet. You see more people walking on the ground. They look comfortable. They do not look like they are struggling. You look down at your stilts. They are heavy. The straps are worn. You feel a strange twinge of doubt. Why are you up here? You tell yourself it is for the view. You need to see the sheep. But the sheep are harder to see now. They disappear into the dense rows of young trees. You have to constantly move, constantly check. The stillness of the tripod rest is becoming obsolete. If you stand still, you lose your flock in the green maze. And then the trees reach your feet. They are 5 feet tall, a dense, impenetrable thicket of young pines. You are walking with your wooden feet brushing the tops of the trees. It is a surreal sensation. You are walking on the forest. But it is difficult. The branches snag your stilts. The trees are planted close together to encourage straight growth, leaving little room for a giant stride. You have to pick your way carefully. You are tripping more often. The villagers are happy. You hear them in the market. The trees mean money. Resin is liquid gold. It is used for turpentine, for varnish, for soap. The government was right, they say. The wasteland is becoming a treasure chest. The damp, sickly swamp is becoming a healthy, productive forest. But for you, the shepherd, it is a slow suffocation. The open space is your cathedral, and they are filling it with pillars. You start to see fences. This is the ultimate insult. In the old days, the land was common. Now, plots are being sold. Investors from boredom are buying up tracts of the new forest. They put up wire fences to mark their property. A man on stilts cannot cross a fence easily. You have to find a gate. You are being funneled into lanes and tracks. Your infinite freedom is being sliced into squares. One afternoon, you come across a new kind of worker. He is not a shepherd. He is not a drain digger. He carries a strange little hatchet and a clay pot. He stops at a pine tree, one of the older ones, perhaps 10 years old now, and carefully slices a strip of bark from the trunk. He fixes the clay pot to the bottom of the cut. He is bleeding the tree. He is a rawe senior, a resin tapper. He looks at you hovering above him. "Good day," he says. He does not look impressed by your height. He looks at you like you are an antique. "Good day," you reply. "Watch your step," he says, gesturing to the pots. "Don't knock them over." He turns back to his tree. He is harvesting the wealth of the new Landes. He walks on the ground. He wears simple wooden clogs. He doesn't need to see the horizon. He only needs to see the next tree. His world is small, vertical, and focused. You walk away, feeling a sudden, crushing sense of obsolescence. The economy of the region is shifting beneath your feet. Wool is cheap, mutton is common. But resin is the future. The sheep are becoming a nuisance in the eyes of the foresters. They trample the undergrowth. They get in the way. You find yourself pushed to the margins. You graze your flock on the fire breaks, the wide strips of land cleared to stop forest fires. You graze them on the edges of the dunes, where the sand is too shifting for the pines to take root. You are becoming a refugee in your own home. The shade is the strangest part. For generations, the shepherds of the Landes lived under the open sky, exposed to the brutal sun. Now, there is shade everywhere. It is cool under the trees. Dark. Mushrooms grow in the damp needles. It feels enclosed. You miss the sun on your face. You miss the vast, blinding dome of the sky. The trees continue to grow. 6 feet, 7 feet. Now, even on your stilts, you are walking through a tunnel. You can no longer see over the tops. The horizon is gone. The world ends 20 yards away in a wall of pine bark and needles. You feel a claustrophobia that is hard to describe. You are a creature of the infinite, trapped in a cage of wood. You try to find the high ground, but even the ridges are planted. There is no escape from the green. The isolation changes flavor. Before, it was the isolation of emptiness. Now, it is the isolation of obscurity. You are hidden. A man could be standing 50 feet away from you in the forest, and you wouldn't know it until he stepped out from behind a tree. The silence is secretive. You notice that the younger generation is not making stilts. Why would they? It is hard to walk on stilts in a forest. It is dangerous, and there is no need. The ground is dry. The boys are becoming resin tappers. They are learning to climb the trees, not to tower over them. They use ladders, not stilts. The ladder is the new tool of the Landes. It is a static, vertical climb, not a mobile, horizontal stride. You look at your own stilts. The wood is old, polished smooth by years of wear. The leather straps are patched and repatched. They are extensions of your body, but they feel heavy now. They feel like anchors dragging you back to a time that is vanishing. One evening, you are returning to your hut. The sun is setting, but you can't really see it. You just see the red light filtering through the trunks, creating a tiger, striped pattern on the forest floor. You trip on a root, a thick, gnarly pine root that has buckled the path. You stumble. You catch yourself on a tree trunk. You stand there, hugging the tree, breathing hard. You are tired. You are tired of fighting the forest. You are tired of the constant obstacle course. You look up the trunk of the tree. It goes up and up, straight and true. It is taller than you will ever be. It has won. You push yourself off the tree and limp the last mile home. The wind sighs in the branches above you, a mournful, whispering sound. Hush, it seems to say, hush. The time of the giant is over. That night, you sit by your fire. You can smell the resin on your clothes. It is inescapable. You look at the fire, burning pine cones that pop and hiss. You think about the open marsh. You close your eyes and try to summon the image of the flat, endless gray horizon. But it is fading. In your mind's eye, all you can see are trees. Row after row of silent, growing trees. You realize that you are witnessing the end of a world. The water has gone. The birds have gone. And soon, the giants will go too. The forest does not need shepherds on stilts. It needs men with axes and cups. You drift off to sleep, listening to the new sound of the night. Not the silence of the void, but the rustle of a million needles brushing against each other. It is a cozy sound, perhaps, a sheltered sound. But to you, it sounds like the door of a cage gently clicking shut. Time moves differently in a forest than it does on a marsh. On the open plain, time was measured by the slow arc of the sun and the shifting of shadows that stretched for miles. It was cyclical, open, and vast. In the forest, time is vertical. It is measured by the growth rings of the pines, thickening silently year after year, and by the accumulation of needles on the floor. You feel this passage of time in your own joints, which creak more loudly than your stilts these days. You are an old man now, the landscape you were born into, that endless, waterlogged mirror of the sky, exists only in your memory and in the stories you tell to children who look at you with polite disbelief. To them, the Landes has always been a forest. They cannot imagine a world without the dark, green canopy. They cannot imagine a world where a man needed to be 10 feet tall just to check his mail. You still walk on your stilts, but it is an act of stubbornness rather than necessity. The ground is dry. The drainage ditches, dug deep and straight by the government engineers, have done their work too well. The sponge has been squeezed dry. You could walk to the village in your Sunday shoes and barely get a speck of dust on them, let alone mud. But you strap on the wood anyway. It is a habit, a ritual, a way of refusing to shrink. But the world has shrunk around you. The horizon, once infinite, is now always 50 feet away, blocked by a wall of bark. You navigate the fire breaks, the long, straight avenues cleared through the trees to stop the spread of flames. These are the only places where you can really stride out, but even there, you feel contained. You are walking down a hallway, not across a world. You notice that you are becoming invisible in a new way. In the old days, you were a landmark. People oriented themselves by the sight of the big shepherd in the distance. Now, you are a ghost haunting the fire lanes. The resin tappers, busy with their cups and their ladders, barely glance at you. They are the new masters of this domain. They move vertically, yes, but they climb trees. They do not become them. There is a day. You remember it clearly, when you realize that the utility of your life has officially ended. You are bringing the flock back from a patch of grazing land near the coast. The sheep are fewer now. The wool trade is dying, suffocated by the cotton coming from abroad and the resin money coming from the trees. You are crossing a track, a new road made of crushed stone and packed earth. You hear a noise. It is not the wind, and it is not a wolf. It is a mechanical growl, a rhythmic chugging that grows louder and louder. You stop and lean on your staff. Your dog whines and tucks his tail between his legs. Around the bend comes a machine. It is a motor car, one of the early, boxy contraptions that looked like a carriage searching for a horse. It is moving impossibly fast, throwing up a cloud of dust. The driver, wearing goggles and a leather cap, sees you. He slams on the brakes. The machine shudders to a halt. The driver stands up and stares. To him, you are a hallucination. A man on giant sticks emerging from the pine trees like a spirit of the folklore past. He grabs a camera, a black box with a bellows, and points it at you. Hold still! He shouts over the noise of the engine. You stand still. You are good at standing still. You have been practicing for 50 years. He takes his picture. He waves. He grinds the gears, and the machine roars away, leaving the smell of burnt fuel to mingle with the smell of pine resin. You stand there for a long time after he is gone. You realize that you have crossed a threshold. You are no longer a shepherd using a tool. You are a curiosity. You are picturesque. You are something to be photographed, like a ruined castle or a strange rock formation. You have become a tourist attraction in your own home. This shift from function to spectacle accelerates. In the village, the young men no longer make stilts to keep their feet dry. They make them for the festival. They form groups. Compagnies da chasseurs, dressed in the traditional sheepskins and barrettes that you wear every day. But for them, it is a costume. They paint their stilts in bright colors. They practice synchronized dances. You watch them in the square on Bastille Day. They are athletic, skilled, and energetic. They perform the quadrille on stilts, spinning and hopping to the applause of the crowd. It is impressive. But it is not walking. It is not the slow, meditative stride of a man who has to cover 20 miles of swamp before sunset. It is frantic. It is performance art. Historians often point to the late 19th century as the death knell of the working stilt walker, citing the forestry and the drainage. But true extinction is a quiet, personal event. It happens when a man looks at his tools and realizes they are heavier than the joy they provide. For you, the moment comes on a Tuesday in November. It is raining, a cold, driving rain that lashes against the pine trees. In the old days, you would have stood above this rain, wrapped in your cloak, feeling superior to the mud. But today your knee aches. The deep, throbbing ache of old bones that have spent too many years balancing on wood. Your back is stiff. The strap across your shin feels like it is cutting into your flesh. You are standing near the sheep pen. The ground is firm. You look at the ladder leading up to your loft, where you usually store the stilts. You look at the bench where you sit to unbuckle them. You sit down. You undo the leather knot at your knee. The leather is dark and polished, shaped perfectly to the curve of your leg. You undo the foot strap. You slide your foot out. You do the same with the left leg. You stand up on your own 2 feet. You feel the familiar, heavy shortness. You pick up the stilts. Usually, you would lean them against the wall, ready for the morning. But today, you carry them into the barn. You walk past the sheep, who look at you with mild confusion. You are suddenly a stranger, a small, stumpy man at eye level with them. You lay the stilts up in the rafters, back in the shadows where the dust collects. You place your long staff beside them. You pat the wood once, a silent gesture of thanks. They carried you across oceans of mud. They kept you dry. They made you a giant. You walk back to the house. You sit in a chair by the fire. You stretch your legs out. Your feet are on the floor. They stay on the floor. It feels remarkably comfortable. It feels final. The next morning, you wake up and you do not reach for the wood. You put on your clogs. You walk out to the sheep. You are down in the brush with them now. You can smell the wet wool up close. You can see the details of the moss on the ground. The world is intimate, small, and detailed. You miss the view, yes. You miss the feeling of floating. But there is a dignity in the ground too. You become one of the elders of the village, the old stilt walker. People buy you drinks in the tavern to hear stories about the days before the trees. You tell them about the time the snow was so deep that only the stilt walkers could move between farms, delivering bread and medicine like angels on wooden wings. You tell them about the wolves you spotted from your watchtower height, saving the flock. You tell them about the courting, about knocking on second-story windows. They listen, but you can see it in their eyes. They think you are embellishing. They cannot conceive of the open swamp. The forest is so total, so permanent in their minds, that the idea of a horizon, less plain, seems like a fairy tale. They ask you, but wasn't it hard? Wasn't it boring? You smile into your wine. Boring, perhaps, but it was a boredom that belonged to you. It was a boredom of kings. You hear news of a man named Sylvain Dornan. He is a baker from the region, a man who refuses to let the tradition die. But he takes it to the extreme. He decides to walk from Paris to Moscow on stilts. It is a grand, absurd adventure. He wears the sheepskins. He walks for 58 days. He becomes famous. The newspapers call him the giant of the Landes. You follow his journey through the reports in the village gazette. You feel a strange mix of pride and sadness. He is showing the world what you can do. But he is doing it on a stage. He is walking on paved roads, through cities, past crowds. He is not watching sheep. He is watching the audience. The stilt has migrated from the tool shed to the circus tent. The culture is fossilizing before your eyes. The tchangues are becoming symbols on postcards. Tourists buy little wooden dolls of shepherds on stilts. You see them in the shop windows. The dolls are cute, smiling figures. They do not capture the grit in your eyes from the wind, or the numbness in your toes, or the profound, existential silence of the marsh. You spend your final years sitting on a bench outside your cottage. The bench is low. The sun warms your face. You watch the resin tappers cycling home from work, their bikes laden with pots. The bicycle has replaced the stilt. It is faster, smoother, and modern. A man on a bicycle is a man of the 20th century. A man on stilts is a medieval relic. But sometimes, when the wind blows just right, bending the tops of the pine trees, you close your eyes. In the rushing sound of the needles, you can hear the ghost of the open moor. You can feel the sway. Your muscles remember the micro adjustments needed to stay upright. You feel the phantom pressure of the strap on your calf. In your dreams, you are never old, and you are never on the ground. In your dreams, the trees vanish, the canals fill in, the paved roads dissolve into sand. The horizon snaps back into a perfect, unbroken line. You are young, and your legs are made of pine, light and strong. You take a step, click. You take another, clack. You are rising above the mud, above the years, above the forgetting. You are walking towards the sunset, a silhouette etched against the burning sky. forever suspended between the earth and the heavens. The Landes of today is a place of industry, of paper mills and holiday camps. The swamp is a memory buried under millions of tons of root and soil. But if you walk quietly through the forest, away from the bike paths and the roads, you might find an old, rotting piece of timber half buried in the needles. A piece of wood with a notch cut into it, perhaps the remains of a footrest. It is a fossil of a lost species, the species of the human giant. They say that history is written by the victors, but in the Landes, history was written by the vertical. It was a brief, strange, and beautiful moment when a group of humble shepherds looked at the mud, looked at the sky, and decided to meet it halfway. They defied gravity, they defied the landscape, and for a few centuries they looked down on the world with a gentle, benevolent gaze. Now, the giants are sleeping. The stilts are laid to rest. The sheep graze on solid ground. But the sky is still there, waiting for someone to rise up and greet it. Now, let the image of the tall, swaying pines fade gently from your mind. Let the dark green of the forest soften into a hazy, comforting gray. The long stride of the shepherd has slowed to a stop, and the wooden legs are put away in the quiet of the barn, resting in the shadows where the dust motes dance in the last beams of sunlight. There is no more mud to navigate, no more balance to maintain. The ground beneath you is solid, warm, and welcoming. You don't need to hold yourself up anymore. You can let go of the tension in your calves, the tightness in your back. The work is done. The flock is safe in the fold, huddled together in a soft cloud of wool. The wind has died down to a whisper, barely stirring the air. Feel your own legs becoming heavy, sinking comfortably into the mattress, grounded and secure. There is no need to climb, no need to watch the horizon. The world has drawn in close and cozy around you, the rhythm of the walking. That steady click-clack, click-clack, slows down, transforming into the steady, rhythmic beat of your own breathing. In and out, slow and deep. The fire in the hearth is just a bed of glowing embers now, pulsing with a dull, red warmth. The shadows in the room are long and still. You are safe here, in the quiet aftermath of the story. The history has folded itself away, leaving only the peace of the night. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. Let the darkness wrap around you like a heavy wool cloak, keeping out the chill, keeping out the noise. You are drifting now, not over a swamp, but on a soft, dark river of sleep, drifting further and further away from the waking world. Everything is still. Everything is quiet.